In this clip, we're going to take a look at setting up headers and footers on your website. As you can see, we've got the sales data sheet, we did the specifications sheet, and then there's also a documentation sheet. It's always a good idea in your workbooks to include at least some documentation so somebody else that comes along and wonders what the purpose of the spreadsheet is and so on. So what I want you to do is I want you to, where it says put your name here, just go ahead and type in your name. For the date completed, type in whatever the date happens to be. So for now, I'm just going to type in 7/1/2015. For today's date, I'm going to type in equal today in 2 parentheses. Excel has a built-in today function which grabs the current date from your computer and just enters that in. For the age in days, that's going to be equal to today's date, and we'll subtract off the date completed. So right now that displays it as 0. If I format this with a comma format and get rid of the decimal places, you can see what happens. So for instance, if I would have completed this on 6/15/2015, you can see that our age and date now shows you the 16 days for the age of this spreadsheet. Other things that you might include on the documentation is some sort of purpose about this particular file. You might want to have something about modifications to it and keep track of that. Anything that's going to help a future author, or I should say a future viewer, to understand what's going on with this spreadsheet. Alright, so let me go back, change the date to when we're putting this in. And next what we want to do is group all of our sheets together. The reason we want to group all the sheets is that way anything that I change as far as headers and footers, that'll appear on every single sheet that I have. So an easy way to group your sheets together is you click on the leftmost sheet to select that. So in this case it's documentation. Hold my shift key down and then click on the rightmost sheet that you want to choose. Then I'm going to go to the page layout tab. Under the page setup group, I want to choose print titles. In print titles, it gives me the page setup dialog box where there's a page tab, margins, header and footer, and sheet. And the tab that shows up is whatever you used the last time you were adjusting this. So first I'm going to start out on page. Biggest thing on this one is deciding if you want this in portrait or landscape mode. Normally what you want to do is take a look at your sheets, see if you're bleeding over onto one extra page because you've got extra columns that are a little bit wide. Then you might want to switch that to landscape mode. The other thing that sometimes you can do is choose where it's got fit to, and that way if you have just a little bit that bleeds onto a second page, you might want to force it to fit onto 1 page wide, 1 page tall. But I'm going to leave this to 100% the normal size. Next I want to look at the margins. Occasionally what you might want to do is adjust the left and right margin, narrow that up just a little bit. That'll give you a bit more print space that you can use on your pages. The left margin, you might want to leave that a little bit larger if you know somebody's going to use a 3-hole punch on the pages, and you can adjust it that way. For header and footer, we'll go and create a custom header. So for our custom header, we're going to have whoever the author was. So I'll put name, type in my name. Center section, you can put in say a class or the school or something like that. So I'll just put in Loras College. For the right section, I want to have date printed, and I want to use this date tool. Looks like a little flip chart calendar. It's insert date, and that gives me the syntax ampersand square bracket date. So that'll pull in whatever the computer believes is the current date. Next I'm going to add a custom footer. I've got the word file, and I want to put in my file name. The file name can be retrieved by clicking on this little Excel tool, and that will insert the file name. In the center section, I'm going to put in the word page, a space. This tool gives me the page number. Type in another space, the word of, and then I want to have how many pages all the worksheets together are going to be. So I'll have 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3 if I've got 3 pages. Finally, in the rightmost section, we want to keep track of what the sheet tab is when we print all this out. That's this tool here to insert the sheet name, and it'll give you ampersand tab. I'll hit OK, choose print preview, and so far it looks like I've got the documentation page, my specifications page, here's the sales data, and you can see on this one it bled over onto a fourth page, I should say in this case, or 2 pages for that last sheet. So I'm going to want to clean that up individually on that sheet tab. So let's go back. Now that I've set up the headers and footers, make sure that you ungroup the sheets. If you forget to ungroup them, anything that you type into any one of these cells is going to go onto every single sheet in that same location. So you always want to make sure that you ungroup the sheets. So I'll right click, choose ungroup sheets. Then I want to go to my sales data. That was the one that you can see. Here's the page break. And we want to change this just slightly so this will show up on that same page. So you can kind of decide a couple things. One way I could do it is change the orientation to landscape. That takes care of the problem. Or what I could do is maybe narrow up one of these columns. So I'll try to double click here, and oops, that actually made the problem worse, where I've got order of operations that made it as wide as that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take order of operations, click and drag the cells that I've got this pertaining to, and I'm going to go to Home, Merge and Center, and merge and center that title across those 3 cells. Now I'll try to narrow up my column. Still looks like it's a little bit too wide. I've got this blank column in here that I could narrow that up and see if that takes care of it, and that looks pretty good. So we've got the order of operations. We can boldface this so it kind of looks like the rest of our field names, but I want to keep that separate using a blank column from my sales records. All right, so back to the documentation page. I'll save my file, and that's setting up headers and footers.